Just a reminder that this is being recorded. If you don't want to be on the screen, just keep yourself muted and your video off. So welcome to Supporting Students with Disabilities to be successful in an online learning environment with Dana Gullo. Thank you for coming to one of the later sessions on a Friday afternoon. We're looking forward to it. So go ahead, Dana.
Thank you very much. So my name's Dana Gullo. My research was all about the transition with students with disabilities going into remote learning during the spring semester of 2020 at a small community college out in the Midwest. So I wanted to share my results with all of you. And I also wanted to hear your story. All of us had transitioned, at least the majority of us, were probably in higher education and even K through 12, had the experience of quickly pivoting to what was coined remote learning last year. So I'm very curious to hear about your positive and challenging experiences as well. As I mentioned, I am a senior instructional designer at York College of Pennsylvania, and we were right in the thick of it. And we also got that news that, okay, we're gonna have to close the college down in spring, and it happened within a week. So that was very stressful for a lot of people, trying to get everybody prepared in Zoom, it's like we're in right now, and all of their course content inside of our LMS, which we use Canvas, as many institutions do. In my study, it was Blackboard. So our goal as an instructional designer is really to make sure that all students have access to course content, engage in learning activities, and interact with their instructors and classmates without thinking about the learning management system. So that's tough for faculty who had to quickly transition to online learning. So having that interest in students with disabilities and advocating for their rights, I was curious, how did they transition to online learning and remote learning for that matter, especially during a pandemic? Did they have a lot of challenges? Did they have good experiences? For some of you in this session, you probably already have some background and interest, obviously, in students with disabilities. So you understand the concepts of universal design for learning, making sure that all students have the same experiences as students without a disability. So I was curious, now that everything is online, using different methods, video, audio, type, imagery, would it help them versus hinder them? So that's the basis of the study. And at any point too, as I'm going through this presentation, I know it's the end of the day, and I really appreciate all of you coming today on a Friday afternoon. It's almost 5 o'clock here where I am in Maryland. So I really, really thank you for doing that. So I want to have a little less of me talking throughout this whole thing. And I would really like for you to tell me about your experiences. And I'm going to attempt, and hopefully this goes smoothly, to share a Padlet with you. You could do it on your phone, you could do it on the computer. If you really just do not like using tools like that, you could use the chat. That's fine too, and you can type in your answers. This is a little bit of a polling, and I'm going to pop in the link to the Padlet here if you wish to use it. Hopefully all of you had just received that. And these are the 3 things that I would like you to answer. So did you teach? So if you're a professor, did you teach remotely, meaning going to synchronous online and maybe fully asynchronous online during the spring semester of 2020 because of the pandemic? Have you been trained to teach online before the pandemic? So did you ever receive any formal training? Have you taught maybe previously online? You could just answer yes or no's, whatever you feel comfortable with. And the last one, did you consider digital material accessibility when teaching remotely? So meaning, did you use Word documents and use the accessibility checker to make sure that a document can be read by a screen reader? Or did you remember to be mindful and to use closed captioning with your videos or provide transcripts with your podcasts? So these are the things to think about. If you could just take a few moments and answer these, I'd really appreciate it. If you have any questions, if they're able, Amy, I'm not sure if they have the capability of unmuting themselves, by all means, or if you feel more comfortable raising your hand, whatever you like. Let's keep this informal, and I would like to have discussion. I'm going to stop my share for a second. I'm going to share the screen of the Padlet. It looks like everybody's in there so far. Let me get this shared. Hopefully all of you can see my Padlet. Okay, so you were taking classes. All right, great. Instructional designer, okay. Yeah, obviously this continued to the fall. So it's not just spring. Many institutions continue to do it through the fall and spring. I know my institution's doing what's called a high flex model, half are on campus, half are remote. That's been a challenge for faculty as well. I've been hearing a lot, kind of balancing that dual role of an online instructor as well as face-to-face is tough. Learned on your own prior to the pandemic. Wow. So was that whoever wrote that, because obviously I don't see names. So when you say you learned on your own, did you mean you did a lot of like webinars online, or was it just like get into it, you're just teaching kind of thrown into it and kind of figured it out on your own, or a combo? I don't know if anybody would like to respond to that with unmuting. Oh no, that's
Looks like
okay.
she
Thank you for,
responded in the chat. Yep.
yes, I did saw that. Through experience. Yeah, sure. Yeah, that happens a lot. It's like, hey, we need this filled. Do you mind doing it online? It's like, okay, sure. And sometimes that's the best way to learn. One of the best. Honestly, I feel being a student online makes you one of the best online instructors, to be quite honest with you, because that's when technology goes wrong and you're like, how do I do this? And having that experience, feeling maybe sometimes isolated online too, because you're not used to asynchronous, it'll make you a more present, more visible instructor online because you know how it feels. Let's see. Exactly. All right. Thank you. Oh, adjunct. Of course. Okay. Been there too with the new prep. And it's like, here, do a totally new online course. So not only do you have to teach it online, maybe you're not too comfortable, you also have to prepare for the entire course. Interesting. Okay, great. Well, thank you for these responses. So you did think of accessibility. I'm really happy to hear that. It's one of their missions. Okay, I love you. Okay, I'm gonna have to heart that now. So thank you. Not everybody makes that a mission. There are more though, which is really wonderful to hear, especially with the closed captioning. Yes, with closed captioning, that's becoming more common, it seems, although there's still some issues with that because the captioning, especially when it's machine captioning, like say what YouTube uses, it's about 85, 80% accurate. So if you've ever read through some of those captions, sometimes they say things that you did not intend in any way. And how is that helpful for the student? Right? So when we think about that, we should go back and edit it. But again, during a pandemic, and it was a quick shift, you're not really thinking that. So that's excellent to see. So obviously my audience is definitely thinking of disability. So thank you for sharing. I'm going to go back to the presentation now. And something that I read, I don't know if some of you read any Inside Higher Ed articles. Well, Bayview Analytics did a study in April of 2020, and they found in the higher ed realm, 65% of faculty had no prior online teaching experience. So you guys are the outliers. So a lot were just kind of thrown in, so to speak, to do this and right away. So it's like, well, okay, so if a lot of faculty didn't have that training, they may not have had accessibility training as well. Some institutions are better than others about it, where others maybe not as much. They probably know of accommodations, of course, but converting those documents and media to be more accessible, or even the software that they use may not be accessible. So these are the things that I was curious about. So that brings me to the purpose of my study. I really wanted to know the positive and challenging experiences students with disabilities faced during this transition. Again, it could be positive, maybe more universal design for learning principles. It could be more challenging because those documents and tools weren't accessible. I also was interested in what type of support the community college, it's a pseudonym that I'm using to keep them confidential, offered to help students with disabilities complete their online courses, and how the learning management system played a role in students with disabilities learning online. And then lastly, I was curious about students who were previously enrolled in an online course and then transitioning versus a student who's never taken an online course, how they did getting into remote learning. Did they do better because of UDL principles? Or was it worse because it was a shock to their system? They've never had an online class and maybe they're not receiving their accommodations. I wasn't sure. So these are all things that I was very interested in hearing. So my research questions for my study was in the transition to learning online in the spring semester of 2020, what types of supports did the college offer to help students with disabilities complete their courses? What were the positive and challenging experiences of learning online for students with disabilities? What factors help students with disabilities to cope during the transition from face-to-face to online learning? And did the learning management system present challenges or help students with disabilities with learning online? And then lastly, as I mentioned, did students with disabilities who were forced online during the transition encounter additional positive or challenging experiences in comparison to students with disabilities who chose voluntarily to take online courses? So my methodology, I used a Qualtrics survey, qualitative and quantitative Qualtrics survey, using Likert questioning. Also added some open-ended questions to kind of get a further understanding of why they answered in the way that they did. Knowing not everybody likes to answer those, I also invited students to volunteer and participate in a semi-structured interviews. Unfortunately, all students declined. So as a researcher, as you can imagine, that was a little disappointing because I really wanted them to elaborate on why maybe certain files didn't open for them or why did you answer in that way. And I'm thinking too, this was during a pandemic and I was surveying them in the fall and perhaps they had a burnout. You know, not everybody likes to disclose their disability, first of all. Second, everybody's stressed and feeling that kind of fatigue and burnout. So that could have also played a part. Because of that, I was able, and I approached the vice president for academic affairs at the community college to kind of elaborate on their transition plan at that institution, as well as maybe some insight on why the students answered the way they did. So at least I got a little bit of additional information. So as I mentioned, the participants at the school, I had all the students who attended the community college during the spring semester of 2020 enrolled either in face-to-face or online, the survey invitation. So they had about 1,700 students who were in class during the spring. Only 10 students with disabilities answered. I had a lot of students complaining, but none of them had disabilities. And some were really glowing reviews too, as well. But I was really interested in those with a diagnosed disability and how they transitioned. And I opened it up into the entire population because I wanted to capture those students' voices who did not disclose their disability with the college. As we know, a lot of students, when they transition from high school to college, try to remove that disability stigma from their name. They feel like it's a fresh start. They can come into college. They don't want to be known as that kid who needs extra time on an exam or needs some type of device to help them. They just kind of want to leave that behind, some anyway. And some experience stigma. I mean, let's face it. So when they ask for accommodations, some students, are kind of looked upon by their faculty as if maybe they're receiving an advantage uh, for extra time or needing to record lectures or whatever it may be. So some don't disclose, or some just simply don't know about the accommodations that could be offered to them. That's another reason as well. So I was glad that I was able to capture at least 10 students with a diagnosed disability. So the results. As I mentioned, I had 10 students and the age really, really varied. And again, it's a community college, so it didn't really surprise me all that much, but still a little surprising nonetheless. So 3 students said that they were between the ages of 40 and 49. 3 said between 18 and 20. 2 said 30 to 39, and 2 also were 20 to 29. So it was really neat to see the age differences and how maybe that would play out in the results. Now the breakdown by disability type, this is what it was very eye-opening for me. Again, as an instructional designer, most of the time when I'm working with courses, I always think of either physical disabilities or perhaps maybe like dyslexia, ADHD, low hearing, low vision, that type. I didn't think of mental health. And I hate to, and I'm kind of embarrassed to admit that. But that was not something I was thinking right off the bat as a disability that maybe would be a factor in the study. Well, as you can see, 50% of the students who participated, so 5, had either a mental health or a combination of mental health or another disability. So that was really telling to me. It's like, okay, that's really interesting to know. There were learning disabilities, and each were just one student each. A neurocognitive difference, ADHD, and autism, chronic pain disorder, a chronic post-traumatic stress disorder, and just multiple disabilities. Some didn't want to state exactly. So that was interesting to me. A lot of these two, that is really interesting, is that most of them are hidden disabilities. Again, we always think of the physical as well. So that was, I thought this population was very interesting. So then I asked about what was their online course experience. And the community college, they told me they've always had online learning. They had a lot of hybrid. So it wasn't too surprising to me that only one person never had an online course. So unfortunately, that left me thinking, well, I can't really compare too much with students who were already, just always face to face or had all online and transitioning. But at least I had that one person. But the majority, as you can see, at least 40% had at least 4 or more courses. So they had some experience in online. So then breaking it down by research question, the top 5 just-in-time support services the college offered to help students with disabilities complete their course during the pandemic. And they were financial aid, technical support, chat function for immediate help, like for example, a chat bubble bot comes up for the library, or even tech support for like Blackboard. And I believe they used Teams also for their web conferencing, student support services, and academic advising. So they found them very helpful, which was really nice to read. The positive experiences of remote learning for research question 2. And this probably isn't too much of a surprise for those of you in the group, but ease of access to the LMS was 80%. I was pretty happy about that because not everyone has technology at home. So that was kind of interesting that they were able to have that ease of access. 70% could use the LMS on any device, and overall comfort of using the LMS was 70%. So again, that was really good to hear. So to me, I'm thinking they must have done some decent training prior to the pandemic. And this is what made me very happy to see, and probably the rest of you too. Another positive experience was the use of images and videos in their instruction. Again, this is like UDL just kind of flashing out at me, and maybe I'm reading into it a little bit, but 89% found websites using imagery as well as instructor created videos helpful to their learning. So if that doesn't shout out UDL to you, I don't know what does. So it was really heartening to see that. It's like, great, instructors really did lean to that. And of course, that can come with some issues too, if they're not accessible, but they did find them very helpful. So the positive experiences, and this was really, to me, I thought was wonderful, that 100% of the students surveyed found their instructors helpful in providing course accommodations. So that was great. I mean, after reading the literature and finding that, students sometimes nervous about asking for accommodations, or their instructors seemed a little standoffish about doing it or feeling put out, not at all in this case. Students felt comfortable to approach their instructors, and they found that it was very helpful to complete their courses during this remote transition. So again, that was wonderful news to read. The top 5 challenging experiences of remote learning for students with disabilities. And again, these two, it wasn't too surprising because it did align. If you are aware of the Association on Higher Ed, Education and Disabilities Services, that's AHEAD. You probably have heard of that group before. A lot of the findings that I had, even though it was a small study, aligned with the national study that they did. And the number 1, testing services. And that can mean many things. And what I read was mostly proctoring. I don't know if a lot of you have done online proctoring, but students had issues with that. for accessibility reasons and heightening anxiety levels. Being videotaped, so to speak, recorded while taking a timed test really caused a lot of anxiety in students. I know just at my own institution, that was the case. And students can't go to a testing service because everybody is home. So they can't get those paper tests. And that made it a little bit more difficult too, or even to receive their accommodation. Also, awareness of student accessibility services. That was a key one too. Lack of counseling services at the institution, lack of confidence in learning remotely. So that was also key. And difficulty in communication and interaction with their peers as well as their instructors. So testing services. 60% found it difficult to take exams in Blackboard. And out of the 50% who were dissatisfied with testing services, 30% of the students had a mental health disorder. For the awareness of student accessibility services, 60% of the students did not disclose their disability to the college. Of the students with disabilities who did disclose their disability, who did not, disclose their disability, 83% had a mental health disorder. One student with a mental health disability stated, "I didn't think there was anything student accessibility services could do," embarrassed. And that's true. It's kind of a shame. They didn't really think that service could help them. And again, I think a little more promotion about their services would be helpful. 50% of students did not use counseling services during remote learning, about 50%. And this is because they had counseling services right before the pandemic hit, but nobody was using it because you had to have medical insurance in order to use the counseling services. So people went, but then were turned down. That's a shame. Especially during the pandemic, you think there would be web, counseling, but they didn't use it at that point, and they couldn't get to the campus either. So that was very unfortunate. So the challenging experiences were also 50% lack of confidence in organizing coursework, 30% lack of confidence in meeting assignment deadlines, and 30% of lack of confidence in taking notes during class instruction. And I don't know if some of you were at the last session, I think it was yesterday, during the panel discussion with students who had disabilities. They kind of hit upon this a little bit with the organization of coursework. It's tough, especially if you're dyslexic or you get distracted. We don't know where the students are moving back home. There could be siblings in the other room it's distracting. They're used to being able to go to a testing center where they could be in an environment where they could totally concentrate. Whereas during the pandemic, maybe not. So they were challenges for them. I have ADHD, and trying to pay attention to a computer all day, remember to do more work at home, is extremely difficult. Again, so imagine that coupled on top of whatever their living conditions could be because of the pandemic. Communication and interaction difficulty. Now, even before the pandemic, just online learning in general, if you've read the literature or just experienced it, communication is key when you're online. You never want your students to feel isolated or alone. That's like a top complaint from students. I do all this work. Where's my instructor? They're not in the discussion forums. I don't hear from them. I email them. I don't get responses, you name it. So imagine that on top of a pandemic and then being jumped right into remote learning and having a disability. So 40% of students with disabilities had difficulty with communicating with faculty and classmates in their remote courses. And 50% of students with disabilities identified dissatisfied with faculty and classmate interaction. Communication interaction is key, I feel, in online learning. We have to be visible for our students. Students with mental health disorders or a combination of mental health and other disorders reported 20% extremely dissatisfied with technology services and 10% extremely dissatisfied with tutoring services than any other disability types. So that'd be interesting to know why. So research question 4 was the top 5 support services or people that students with disabilities found very helpful during the transition to remote learning. 80% were classmates, 70% were friends, 70% faculty, 70% academic advising, and 60% financial aid services. So as you can see, the high areas, especially classmates and faculty, are high percentages. That's why that interaction is so important when designing online courses or your remote courses that are synchronous. So these people and services that were ranked by students with disabilities as not helpful at all or did not use the services at the community college. Again, 60% counseling and psychological services, but then we kind of found out why that was. Student accessibility services at 50, tutoring services at 50, and 40% student support services. So again, why? And did they not have just in time? Did they not promote it? What were the reasons? And that's why I wish I had those interviews. So research question number 5, the challenges of the LMS. They use Blackboard. 40% were difficulty with the submission of assignments, 30% difficulty of the organization of the course, and difficulty communicating with faculty and classmates at 40%, and 60% difficulty taking online exams. So that, again, is coming back up. But the helpfulness of Blackboard during the transition. They felt comfortable though, overall at 60%, and they felt it was easy to access their course grades, which was excellent, at 70%. And they felt it was easy to access the Blackboard on any technology device at 80%. And that could be too, because when I had the interview with the VP, he told me even during the pandemic, they still had the campus open, so to speak, so they could use their Wi-Fi hotspots or use the technology. So I have a feeling that has a part of the 80%. So for my last research question was the differences between students who have taken online courses versus those that never did, and slightly more confident if they had 4 or more online courses, of finishing assignments by deadlines, organizing their coursework, taking notes, using the library, and participating in online discussions. But it was only slightly, nothing was statistically significant. So again, I think students still can be taught what it's like to be an online learner. So just as a basic summary of my findings, the overall positive experiences, and there were, and I thought they were telling, and that was comfort using Blackboard, ease of access to course grades, instructors providing accommodations, which was terrific, and the use of images and videos in instructional course materials. Again, those universal design for learning principles are important in your course design. The overall challenging experiences, which were faculty and peer communication, online testing services, confidence with remote learning, and lack of knowledge of student accessibility services, especially for the students who had mental health disorders. To that point, in a study by Cherkov, they stated graduate and professional students with major depressive disorders were 2 times higher in 2020 than in 2019, and diagnosed generalized anxiety disorders were 1.5 times higher in students than in 2019. So as you could tell, anxiety, depressive disorders spiked. And we do have to be mindful of that. And what I'm going to attempt in just a moment is put you into some breakout rooms, because I do have another Padlet for you. And I'm going to put that in the chat. And I want you to talk about what were your positive experiences of remote learning? What were your challenging experiences of remote learning? And how can higher education institutions, or your own institution, if you want to talk about that, better promote mental health awareness and student accessibility support services? If you've done these things already, I would love to hear about what you all did. So just give me one moment. I'm going to stop my share for a sec. And I'm going to get you that link. While I'm doing this, do any of you have any questions or comments before I throw you into a room? There's the Padlet link. All right, I'm going to send you to your room. Take a few moments to discuss those questions, and I'll have you back here in about 5 minutes. Hopefully it works. Oh, I see one of my colleagues is here too. Hi, Vicki. Bye, Vicky. She just disappeared. Poor Brian, he just got popped into a room and he doesn't even know why. They'll catch him up, right? That's always kind of fun in a little awful way. It's like, he just put you in the room, didn't even know. Oh, he came back out. I think, no, he's in there now. I hope. I think I'm getting people in there. Good, they're starting to react. I have to 5:50, correct?
Yep.
I think or so.
Yep. 50 after, yep.
I got lonely in my room. There was nobody there.
Oh, what happened is going on. Maybe people are leaving. Do you want me to assign you to another room? Because there's someone.
No, that's okay. I'll just
You're good.
keep
You're just
filling
gonna
in
write
my
in
little
there.
thing. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm good. Thanks.
All right, sorry.
I kept thinking, was it something I said?
I know. I guess they left because I'm seeing less people.
All I
of a
said
sudden.
was hello.
Well, that's not being very collaborative.
No.
Yeah, a bunch of half of them left. Like,
Yeah, I was gonna say room 1 and room 3 are empty.
They're all
It's
in
a
one room.
out of 1.
Oh, that's a shame. All right, maybe I'll bring them
Breakout of
back.
1.
I hate to do that to them, but there was good intentions.
I know
Just
breakouts
like
are always
students,
hit or
you
miss,
know?
hit or miss. Yes. Yeah.
Don't want to participate. Boink, I'm out. I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't want to torture them anymore, so they're going to come back. I'll just give you a few more minutes to continue putting in some positive and challenging experiences and how we can better promote mental health and accessibility services. Let's have one more minute and then we'll talk about these. While we're waiting, if any of you have any questions for me, please feel free to unmute yourself or type in the chat any questions you may have.
I do have a question that from your study, it looks like most of the students did not necessarily have physical challenging disabilities. And therefore, I would assume most of them didn't use assistive technology while they were taking the classes.
They didn't specify. Again, it would have been nice to know in the interviews, but no, it sounded like the majority of them had some few issues with like Word documents and PowerPoints, but they didn't say why. They didn't elaborate on their answers. So I don't know if they needed anything like read and write bold or, you know, JAWS or what have you. I don't believe so. It really seemed like the majority of them had a mental health disability, and the organization of the course was an issue, but not files. And that, you know, going into this, I really thought I was going to hear a lot of that, or no closed captioning, or, but no, that wasn't their big issue.
Yeah, and that may be because of the type of disability that they had,
Mhm.
didn't require, they were nice add-ons, but they didn't require them in order
Exactly.
to take the course.
Right.
Because I just know that assistive technology was a continuous problem for us. We were using Respondus lockdown browser, and
Right.
you can't use assistive technology with that. So then we'd have to come up with an alternate format of the exam,
Mhm.
and
Exactly.
then have a reader scribe work with the student and being able to give them access to the exam so that they could be able to read it. It was just, we had to come up, we were constantly having to come up with new processes
Yeah,
and
we
do a
also
lot of
had issues.
troubleshooting.
At my institution as well, we had some issues too with our proctoring service. It's not all accessible, and using screen readers, they did figure out ways to get around it to be able to do it. But very similar to Respondus, we also had that problem too.
Mhm.
Sounds quite common.
Mhm.
And I'm just curious too, like the courses they had, maybe they didn't have any proctored exams, but they did have issues with testing. So I would love to, again, find out a deeper reason of, well, what was it? Was it because it was timed? Was it because it wasn't created correctly in Blackboard? What was the actual issue, or not being able to go to the testing center? So it would be interesting to know.
Mhm. And of course, bandwidth was always a problem, because as soon as you add anything on top of just the normal,
Mhm.
LMS accessing, it just chews things up and makes it very difficult for everyone.
Yeah, and that was another issue that came up a lot too, especially students with anxiety. And that was it was the discussion of, should I have my webcam on or off? And,
Mhm.
some departments require it while others don't. So that's been a constant debate too. And I'm sure at your institution and many others as
Mhm.
well, is that it's tough teaching to a bunch of black screens.
Yeah.
And students do want to see each other. And we've heard this in other sessions in this conference, but if they have an accommodation and they have anxiety or whatever it may be that prohibits them from having their camera off, they should be able to do it. But then they stick out if everybody else has their camera on, and then that one or two students don't. Here they are. It's kind of like outing them in a way, and it's a difficult line, that we have to kind of balance. It's having that communication, interaction, but yet we also have to be respectful too of people's
Well,
needs.
and it's not just the students with disabilities and
Right.
outing them, but it's also the
True.
students and their living environment, and
Mhm.
so not only the place they live, but how many people are there and what else is going on in the background, and
Right.
the information they don't want to share.
Right.
So,
Or just
yeah,
simply don't have a camera. That was a
yeah,
lot too. And trying to buy a webcam during the pandemic in the beginning was impossible.
that was impossible. Yes.
So there were so many issues. So there's pandemic issues on top of disabilities, on top of whatever else, the bandwidth, like you're saying. Not everybody had great internet connection, including myself. I had to upgrade while working from home. So, it was a shock to the system for sure. So I'm happy to see there are positive experiences. They see it now. Absolutely. So yeah, using alt text and headings, definitely. Yes, and seeing that the need for accommodations in a remote environment. Yes. Yes, assistive technology, that's a big one. In reacting to accommodation requests. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's one thing that's interesting too. The institution that I studied did not have any instructional design team, and there was no training. Their training of online learning for them was teaching them how to use Blackboard and using Blackboard's resources. That's not exactly online pedagogy, but at least they had some background. So definitely if they had instructional design help along with the counseling services and student accessibility services, hopefully then they could provide more of those opportunities. Absolutely, I agree with that. More money towards student counseling center. Yes, they do. And they need, institutions need to offer free counseling service and also offer it online as well. So students can't be on campus for whatever reason, they can still access that help that they need. Do any of you in this webinar have that service available at their institution, that it is free. They do teleconference or telehealth at your institution.
Ours at Western Oregon University is free, but it's a very long wait to get in to get seen.
Yeah, I
So,
guess so. So it's there, it's just tough to get.
yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like, getting the vaccine.
Yes.
Very similar. At the upgrade too, yeah. Yeah, better training. I'm not sure what better link probably between the two services. And yeah, I've heard that too in the literature as well. There's this disconnect between counseling service or even instructional design and teaching and learning. There needs to be that connection between all departments to really make this change. Is that culture, right? You need that culture shift at your institution that really shows that they support all disabilities. Again, I even hate to even say it's for students with disabilities. It should be for all students, right? That's the whole purpose of universal design for learning. So everybody's included, having the different modalities, giving students that opportunity to choose the way that they can actually demonstrate their knowledge. That's kind of what's important here. And let's face it, the funding too behind it. I know probably some of you had the issue early on in the pandemic, even with closed captioning during a Zoom meeting or Teams or whatever it may be. You had to pay for that service. Not every institution can pay for that. It's very expensive. And it took a while, right? Until we actually were able to get transcription along with Zoom meetings. And again, they're not always accurate. And same thing with video. Not all of those are accurate. So I know students in that environment had a hard time, in Zoom meetings because they couldn't hear their instructor. If they were on campus and they're being, there's a video feed on them and they're watching them in Zoom, they couldn't hear them. And that's not even students who have low hearing. It's a student with perfectly good hearing, but yet can't hear their instructor, can't see. That's why it's important to give your PowerPoints before a lecture. It's also important to have the transcription on, especially if you're a student where English is a second language. It helps all students, right? It's not just students with disabilities. If we kept that in mind, that would be helpful. So these are awesome options. Anybody else want to make a comment? Again, it could be in the chat. I'm seeing some, trying to keep up with that. We have this free counseling service. It's great. Thank you. Thank you, Brian.
This isn't quite
Hey.
specific to the remote learning,
Mhm.
but some of the things that you were mentioning are making me think about whether or not we should be discussing disabilities as being on a spectrum, and that they affect all individuals,
Mhm.
and so that students or faculty who aren't officially don't officially have disabilities might be upfront about saying, hey, I can't hear, I can't see from the back of the room. It really helps me to have captions, that sort of thing. Because if we can start convincing everyone to be more vocal about what it is that's going to help them learn.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Vicki, for coming too. There was a mention in the chat that accommodations require live captioning while live transcript AI are okay for general audience. And thank you, Maureen, for that. And that's right. So obviously, a lot of these lectures did not have a human person there actually translating. So we need those live captions for sure. Anybody else have any last comments? So hopefully your institution, you can start to build that connection with faculty, understanding a little bit more maybe about accommodations, what it means to make it accessible, and even creating an environment as a faculty member. You're the first people to talk with students. Even if you put a statement in your syllabus that just says about here's counseling services at the school. If you need accommodations, please come see me. I'm sure you do that already, but if you have a nice statement in there, other than the whatever they may give you, just to copy and paste into your syllabus, just to show that you care, that compassion, that empathy. Maybe some students who are wavering about coming and approaching you for accommodations will feel more comfortable. And even again, for mental health, maybe they'll use those services. Just seeing and feeling that compassion, it may help. Yes, I think there's another comment. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming out tonight. Again, I really appreciate it. I know it's the end of the conference and you all attended and collaborated. I can share what was written in here, I believe in the Discord group. And again, my PowerPoint slides as well. And thank you,
Yes,
everyone.
Thank you. That was fantastic.
Thank you very much and have a great evening. And thank you, Amy, for helping me out.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that.